Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Burke County Board of Commissioners for Tuesday, May the 21st, 2024 at 6 p.m. I'll call our meeting to order, and we are glad to have Assistant Clerk with us tonight. Kat Wright is taking care of us, and Kat, we have Commissioner Smith, Burns, and myself present. Commissioner Carswell and Commissioner Mulvey are both out of town. So that gives us our roll call along with our manager, attorney, and assistant finance director. We are delighted tonight to welcome all of you. I would remind you to please silence your mobile devices. If you've got a telephone or some kind of equipment that's going to make a noise, please take care of that at this time. And I'll ask all speakers as you come forward tonight to the podium, please be sure that you press the button and the red light is on when you make your presentation so that we can hear you and get a good recording on YouTube as well. We're delighted tonight to have William Williamson, the Director of Faith Outreach for Amorum, to bring forward our invocation. And following the invocation, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance, and we're extremely excited tonight to have a group of 4-H members with us, and they're being led by Nikki Carpenter. So we're glad to have these folks begin our meeting tonight. At this time, I'll ask you to stand, and we'll have our invocation.
If you're a prayerful person, I would invite you to join me in a spirit of prayer. If you're a meditative person, please join me in a spirit of meditation. Lord above, Holy One, known by many names and beyond all names, Spirit of life, Spirit of love, Spirit of community, and Spirit of justice, we invite your presence be with us this evening. We ask your blessings on the people who have been called to lead the community in which we live and work and play. Help them as leaders to always ask, how do we fix this? What do we need to learn? And to whom do we need to listen? Help them remember they are servants, and it is their responsibility to serve the common good of all. Lord above, we also ask your blessings on the people who live within this community, those who choose to live and work and play in this county. Help us as citizens to always ask, how do we help our neighbors? What do we need to know? How might we advocate for one another? Help us to remember that we all have a sacred duty to look out for each other and work together. Lord, grant both leaders and citizens the knowledge and the wisdom to speak out when it is time to speak out, and listen when it is time to listen. May we always be guided by the spirit of community, by the spirit of justice, and the spirit of love. Lord, let us convene tonight in the sacred work of governance and citizenship. This we pray in the name of all we hold sacred and holy, and all that we know is good and right and true. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. We'll ask our 4-H'ers to come forward now. If everyone will face the flag. And after the pledge, we'd like to come down and take a picture, if you don't mind. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And with that, I'll remind you that we are seeking other groups that might be willing to come and open our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Maybe a school group, church group, scouts, any group that you might know. Please pass that word along and you can sign up with our clerk and make that known through our website as well. Again, thanks to the 4-H for helping us tonight. This brings us to item number 4, approval of agenda. Gentlemen, you've had the agenda in advance. I'll entertain a motion at this time for approval.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we approve the agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner Smith. Those in favor signify by the uplifted hand. 3-0. Item 5, approval of meeting minutes. Tonight we have had minutes from February 20, 2024, Board of Commissioner regular meeting, March 5th, 2024, Board of Commission pre-agenda meeting. Do I hear a motion that these be approved as presented?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we approve the meeting minutes as written.
Thank you very much. All those in favor signify by the uplifted hand. And that is all of us, Madam Clerk. This brings us to presentations tonight, and we are delighted to recognize a special citizen in our community. It's not every day that somebody reaches the age of 100, and we're delighted to recognize Mr. Robert Hewitt tonight. And I think just in a day or two, if my memory is correct, Mr. Hewitt will be 100. And so we are delighted to recognize him tonight. And I want to, just one moment, if I can get my stuff to deal with me here. I want to say just a couple things about Mr. Hewitt before we actually have come down to Mr. Hewitt. We want to make a picture in just a moment with you if we can, if you feel like working that much with us. Mr. Hewitt's been a resident of Burke County for 61 years. He's originally from Ontario, Canada, and he's was married to his wife, Elizabeth Walton Hewitt, Mary Elizabeth, for 59 years. And he was a World War II veteran, a vocational education teacher for 30 years, active with the Morganton swim team and other volunteer endeavors. He was an employee for 60 years plus of volunteer work for the United States Park Service. He was the nation's longest serving employee and the oldest park ranger of record, having a parkway overlook named after him. Not bad, huh? Mr. Hewitt traveled to most of the national and state parks. He enjoys bottle collecting, golf ball collecting, watching the Detroit Tigers, March Madness, and is a regular coin collector, and has been often seen on our greenway as well. So we're just delighted to recognize him tonight. He's also a man of faith, attends Faith Presbyterian Church for some 61 years. So with that, we're going to come down, and Mr. Hewitt, we'd love to present you with a walking stick tonight and take a photograph if you are able. And thank you, family, for helping get Mr. Hewitt here tonight for this time of recognition. And we are delighted to recognize that. And we have a proclamation that we have presented to him as well, proclamation number 202407. And at that time, or this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve this proclamation.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve proclamation number 2024-07.
Thank you, Commissioner Smith. All those in favor signify by the uplifted hand. That is all of us, Madam Clerk. All right, thank you very much. This brings us to item number 2, Pet of the Month. And I don't know if they can stand up against a 100-year-old birthday, but we'll see how that goes. Caitlin, good to see you. Let's see what you got for us tonight.
Thank you so much for having us back. Yeah, you're right. That's a tough act to follow there. Congratulations and happy birthday. This is Dexter. Dexter, look at that handsome photo of Dexter. Isn't he beautiful? We have him listed as a Rottweiler mix. We're not entirely sure what he is mixed with, but he is an exceptional dog. He knows many tricks. He is super dog friendly. Whenever we get a little full, he is typically the dog that we kennel with other dogs because he is just so happy to be around other family members. This handsome guy has been with us for about 6 weeks, and we can't really understand why, because he is truly perfect. So if anybody's looking to add a perfect dog to their family, which I don't know why you wouldn't be looking for that, please come and check out Dexter for the day or the weekend, see how he's going to fit in with your family. I know he would love to find a home very soon. So this is our sweet boy Dexter. If you want to take him home now, we can arrange that too. So we never want to leave our kitty cats out. So this is Miss Kathleen, and she is actually our longest cat resident right now. Believe it or not, she's only been with us 2 weeks as our longest resident, so that's really great. We have a very cat-loving community here in Burke County. People absolutely love their cats. They are precious. I don't know if you've ever owned one, but if you're looking to add a sweet addition to your family, Kathleen would be absolutely wonderful. We're getting a lot of kittens this time of year, so if you are in the market, please come and visit us. We have plenty to choose from. I did not put a slide in here, but I did want to provide a small update. We had a wolf stock event with our Animal Services Foundation, and the weather was amazing. It was absolutely beautiful, and we did raise about $13,000 for our foundation. So we look forward to being able to put that back into the community. As always, this is how you can reach us. This is how you can find Dexter. I will deliver him to your home if you need me to. So please reach out to us, email us, however you want to get in touch with us.
All right. Thank you very much, Caitlin. Thank you for the work you're doing at our Animal Services Center. And with that, I'll encourage our citizens to adopt an animal from our Burke County Animal Services Center. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Tanya, I don't know if you can follow all this, but our third presentation comes from Chamber of Commerce. We're going to move on to litter sweep and trash pickup. So we're glad to have Tanya Stevenson, President and CEO of Burke County Chamber of Commerce, with us tonight. Good evening, Tanya.
Thank you so much for having me. I don't know how I got listed behind a 100-year birthday. Happy birthday, sir, and Dexter. But now you have me, so I'm sorry that I won't be as exciting as those two. We are so excited to celebrate tonight our spring litter sweep this year. I want to say a big thank you to Jenna Cole. She is the mastermind behind it and the hard worker behind it. I just get to talk about it, but she is the one that puts in all the work, and I'm very grateful for her and her efforts. Just to give you a little update on where we were this year for the litter sweep. We had 274 registered participants making up 15 teams. 238 bags of trash was collected off of our streets. It's sad that we need to do that, but we do. 19 bags of recycling in total. And let me tell you, these numbers don't include one of our largest teams, which was Burke River Trails, because they did not officially go get counted, and they probably picked up in every community. I'll just say they picked up a lot. and every community helped with getting their bags. We had various large items picked up that included at least 11 tires, 1 love seat, 3 sofas, 2 shopping carts, a recliner, and several pieces of scrap metal. So all of that is off the streets now due to these wonderful volunteers throughout our community trying to help make this beautiful nature's playground, Ed, a lot prettier. We don't want it to be cluttered with litter. I'd like to say a few thank yous. We couldn't do the litter sweep without Republic Services. That's our presenting investor for the event. They helped us in so many ways. They got us into recycling this year, which is very helpful. But we are very grateful for their partnership, and Danelle has been such a great partner with that. We're very grateful for her. The North Carolina DOT is always a great partner with us to give us supplies and helping with details and what streets we need help with. We absolutely could not do it without Burke County. We thank you so much. Your convenience site workers are so precious to take our bags, count them, and report on them for us. They really are a great help, and we appreciate our partnership with the county, so thank you for that. Buffalo Wild Wings provides food for us for our kickoff events and our celebration events, and if you ever come to these things, you'll see they bring a feast, so don't miss them in the future. And we want to say thank you to Murphy's Farm for hosting our celebration event this year, which is a beautiful place and beautiful setting. So we were grateful to be able to have it there. And now what everybody wants to know are the winners. The third year in a row, we have the first place prize to a one-man team. And unfortunately, Gary Jennings couldn't be with us tonight, but he is our one-man team. He picked up 96 bags of trash and 6 bags of recycling, 1 love seat, 7 tires, 3 sofas, and a recliner. And what's beautiful about Gary is, and this year he did it on behalf of the Vietnam Veterans of America, Chapter 1116, and he never takes his prize money. And we just are so I'm in awe of him. So he does this because of the love of the community. And this year he took his prize money and we gave prize money to 4th and 5th place and our recycling winner. So we were very pleased with being able to give out to more teams, but that was because of Gary's generous donation. Second place prize was a family called For Dad and Dougie. Amanda Bluto was the contact person for that. I love the fact that a family got together and did that. They picked up 16 bags of trash, 2 bags of recycling. And third place, we have Waiting for the Train. Got our third place prize. Barbara Lyman and Mimi Pfeiffer, of course, are the contacts there. Mimi's with us. I don't think Barbara's with us. I think I heard she's coming. So they picked up 14 bags of trash and 9 bags of recycling. And we would like to present them a little certificate. Mimi, if you come forward, because you won the recycling prize. We'll get them in just a second. You won the recycling prize. So if you could let her take a picture of us.
Hold on.
Oh, Barbara's here. Come on, Barbara.
And my son, he also picked up the trash. He's gonna get, he'll be with the teams.
We'll get the team in just a minute with the commissioners. Perfect. Okay. So congratulations and thank you for picking up the most recycling. And so, commissioners, I believe y'all have a gift for our award winners, and I think I see these T-shirts. I think Waiting for the Train brought their whole team. Like I said, Gary couldn't be here, and we're not sure if For Dad and Dougie was able to make it or not. We think that they're not going to be able to, but if y'all wouldn't mind congratulating them, we would greatly appreciate it.
All right, well, just before I ask them to come down, let's give all these folks a big hand for their work in our community. And if you help with the litter sweep, I'd like for you to come down front for just a moment. We've got a walking stick for each of the winning teams, and we'd like to take a photograph with you guys as well.
y'all gonna have to scooch. Can y'all make 2 rows and scooch together? That's what I've seen Kay do it.
See everybody? And again, thank you to all of you guys for helping us keep Burke County clean. We appreciate all that you have done for the litter sweep. And
If I could
also-
just say again, thank
Yes.
you, Burke County, to all you guys for all your support.
And thanks to the Chamber of Commerce for putting all this together and making it happen. This brings us to item number 4, Brighter House, a proclamation declaring May as Mental Health Awareness Month. And this will... Yes, we do. Thank you very much. Just before we go there, I'll entertain a motion to accept this report from the Chamber of Commerce and the litter sweep operation.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we accept the report as presented.
Thank you very much. All in favor signify by the uplifted hand. That's all of us, Madam Clerk. Now we've come to Brighter House, and we are delighted tonight to have Stephen Saramuthu, and I probably messed that up.
Sabaramuthu. It's good.
We're
She's good.
delighted
I'm
to
still
have you
learning
guys
too.
with us tonight, along with Sherry and Eddie McKempsey. Thank you all for being here, and I really like that shirt, Eddie. That's way to go, way to go. So we'll hear from you guys at this time.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. On behalf of the various mental health organizations serving Burke County and our new nonprofit, Brighter House, I want to extend our heartfelt gratitude in considering proclaiming May as Mental Health Awareness Month in Burke County. Your support and recognition are invaluable as we strive to raise awareness, reduce stigma, and promote mental wellness in our community. Together, we can make a difference in the lives of those affected by mental health challenges. So thank you for your commitment to this important cause.
All right, thank you very much. We do have a proclamation, and Stephen mentioned several points in there, and I won't take time tonight to read all that proclamation, but we are glad to present this proclamation on behalf of mental health and all the work that goes on in our community, both what Brighter House is doing as well as all the other folks that work so hard in our community to help folks that have these kinds of needs. Any words from you guys, Sherry or Eddie?
Thank you very much. And y'all will be doing some push-ups for Brighter House.
So with that, I'll entertain a motion to accept the proclamation 2024-08.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve proclamation number 2024-08 declaring May as a Mental Health Awareness Month.
All right, all those in favor signify by the uplifted hand. That is all of us. Again, thank you all for what you do. Thank you for being here tonight. This brings us to item number 5 from Tourism Development Authority, and we have with us tonight Ed Phillips, our CEO of Tourism and Development. Evening, Ed.
Good evening. Glad to be here tonight. We're going to get into a few financial reports here in just a second, but first I want to tell you what an amazing spring we're having with travel and tourism in Burke County. We moved the visitor center into our space where we're at now at 140 North Sterling Street on October the 9th. And we upfitted the building to fully represent all of Burke County with beautiful photos and open space and just an inviting place to walk in and talk to us, our staff, about things to do and fun things to do in Burke County. We went back a few weeks ago and we counted all the visitors we had come through our door. We keep a logbook of every single person, except for the mailman and the UPS guy. In January through March, we were up 88% over the previous year. We just finished April, and we counted April, and we were up 202%. The number of people that are walking through that door that are interested in Burke County is absolutely amazing. And we see them every day. We see people looking to relocate, looking for information on the national forests and the state parks, our small towns, our festivals and events, places to eat, places to shop. And so it has been an amazing early start to 2024 with those kind of numbers. I also want to tell you that an increasingly vital part of our economy here at Burke County are vacation rentals. And in the past, there's been, some debate about vacation rentals, are they good or not? I think they're good. We have 198 vacation rentals in Burke County. They account for about 35% of our revenue, occupancy tax revenue and sales tax revenue for people coming to stay here. It's my understanding Lake James, vacation rentals on Lake James for this coming summer are completely booked. Every place is booked throughout the summer. So that's really remarkable that we've grown to a place where we have a destination that can sustain vacation rentals like that throughout the county. To talk about the numbers in our quarterly report for our budget and see what they have up. Here we go. So our assets right now in First Citizens Bank and a capital management account total $763,000. And we also have payables to the city of Morganton and the town of Valdez. They receive part of our occupancy tax for their marketing of their communities. And so we have, basically a total equity of 586 after we give them their money, which they'll request here shortly. Our expenses are in line. Our revenue, so our occupancy tax revenue is our primary source of income. If you stay in a hotel or a vacation rental in Burke County, they charge you a 6% tax. It's paid by the visitor that comes here. And that tax, our budget is $850,000 this year. And right now, through March, we're at 531. And we're going to be very close to that budget at the end of June. One other thing I really want to mention too, beyond the financials, is we've recently initiated the America 250th Burke County Committee. So guess what, people? If you were alive in 1976, and I was a little kid, and I remember the excitement of the 200th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And we're coming up on 250 in 2026, and we've got a committee together. I was recently appointed or elected chair by the group. We have 15 members from all across Burke County, and we're really excited about that. And you're going to hear more about that in the coming months, but we're going to gear up, and we're going to have a fantastic celebration in Burke County of the 250th. Don't ask me to pronounce it. It's a sesquicentennial something or other. But anyway, and Burke County was a super important place during the Revolution and immediately following the Revolution. And so we have a lot of history and a lot of things here we're going to really celebrate and talk about. So you'll hear from that. Any questions I can answer about the finances or?
All right, thank you, Ed. Any questions for Ed tonight? Seeing here none, I'll entertain a motion to accept this report as presented.
Mr. Chairman, I move to accept the report as presented and offer Mike's thanks.
All right, all those in favor signify by the uplifted hand. That's 3-0. Ed, again, thank you for the report. Thank you for the great work you're doing. Sounds like our tourism is doing real well. All right, this brings us tonight to scheduled public hearings at this time. We do not have any public hearings tonight, so this will bring us on to informal public comments. We have several speakers who have signed up with our clerk to speak tonight. Our first speaker will be Locke Hoffman. Mr. Hoffman? Mr. Hoffman, are you present? Don't see Mr. Hoffman. Okay. Mr. John Flood. Mr. Flood? And please state your name and address, please, for the record.
On the memorial to the Confederacy. 1863, Abraham Lincoln stated for me, and I think for most of our country, this cornerstone foundation of the United States of America. 407 years ago, our fathers brought forth upon this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men were created equal. 3 years earlier, Alexander Stephens, the Vice President of the Confederacy, said, "Our new government's foundation, its cornerstone, rests upon the great truth that the Negro is not equal to the white man, that slavery, the subordination to the superior race, is the natural and moral condition. African slavery as it exists is the proper status of the Negro in our form of government. It is the immediate cause of the late rupture and present revolution, the Civil War." The state of Texas, in their articles of secession, said the servitude of the American race as existing in the United States is mutually beneficial to both bond and free, and is abundantly authorized and justified by the experience of mankind, and the revealed will of the Almighty Creator is recognized by all Christian nations. In 1861, Jefferson Davis, the President of the Confederacy, said, "You cannot transform the Negro into anything 1/10 as useful as slavery allows him to be." He might be a little surprised that in 2024, the Secretary of Defense and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, teachers, professors, doctors, lawyers, parents, congressmen, senator, Supreme Court justices, and President of the United States were members of that inferior race. That's a statement of inferiority for an entire race. The problem of inferiority as a statement of racial superiority, you got to be superior to somebody, is that it strips the people of their humanity. Black Africans were not quite human. You could not put a person on an auction block and sell them like they were a mule or a cow without just taking away their humanity. The Nazis in Germany knew this. They declared that the Aryan race was a superior race to all races, which gave them the way to strip away the humanity of all their neighbors, conquer them, enslave them in work camps, and gave a special status to the Jewish people, which they were called subhuman. It's beyond time that we recognize the people who denied the ability of people to take away and strip their humanity and overcame slavery and put a memorial up to them and remove the memorial to the enslavers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flood. George Logan.
Good evening. I'm George Logan. I want to share with you, I just came from a meeting for the Burke Coalition for Reconciliation, and we talked about some of the history of Burke County as it pertains to slave holders and enslavement. And it brought me to my mind a few things. One is that I was listening to a message of a pastor in Texas named Robert Morris recently, and he was addressing his congregation of several thousand people. And his title was Lack of Understanding. And he was talking about his own journey, his own experience of dealing with the racism or isms, even within his own family. And he concluded that part of the reason there's such an obstacle is because of a lack of understanding. And when we have our meetings, we're basically doing that. We're bringing understanding to what the past used to be, not for the purposes of staying in the past, but for the purposes of removing any barriers to going forward. And it would be a great asset to this community if those who are the gatekeepers of our community, county commissioners, would commission a team of people to come together and talk civilly about why it's so important or not to have that memorial removed or to be kept. To be in a space where there's a respect for each person, a valuing of each person, but a dialoguing. And I truly believe that if that were the case, doesn't mean that the monument would come down, but it would mean that this community would become closer. I saw also in a PBS story of Alamance County, and according to their story, the guy who was sharing said it was the most divided of counties yet they're still coming together in the hopes that in the end, they would be considered divided, but that they would be considered together. I truly believe that if we want the type of county that speaks of advancing, we have to address some things that sometimes we don't want to. And I think you all are in a position to help that happen. And again, I appreciate you all allowing us to come and share this with you each month. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Logan. Carla Kincaid.
Good evening. As we embark on Juneteenth, I think last year I got up and said a few words about Juneteenth. As we embark on that day, which I think will be the Wednesday before your next county commissioners meeting. 3 minutes wasn't enough last year, and 3 minutes is probably not enough today either to start, just to begin to talk about Juneteenth. I get the Daily Word every day, our Daily Bread, and I like to study this, and they've got a Juneteenth edition. And the name of it is The Spirit and Liberty. And it begins by giving a story about a person who celebrates Juneteenth. And it says, Juneteenth is our family's 4th of July. And I think the young man that was just up here talking about the Declaration of Independence 200 years ago, well, that didn't include everybody. And in this reading, it says, Juneteenth is our family's 4th of July. With parades, barbecues, fireworks, and family reunions, we've come together to celebrate liberation of the black body and soul. Although joyous, Juneteenth filled my young mind with confusion. Sunday sermon said, Christ died for all our sins. Why did God love us and die for us and allow us to be brutalized? How was I free and equal, yet on the receiving end of inequality? I had to look back on history before Juneteenth to understand the enslaved had long been fighting for freedom physically through uprisings and escape, and spiritually. God wasn't a far-away entity they had heard about. God was with them, living in them, giving them peace that transcends all understanding, and helping them chart their way to freedom. I realized then while we danced in those streets on Juneteenth, while we joyously wrapped our arms around each other and wailed when the preacher spoke about freedom in Christ. The freedom those broken, battered bodies, our enslaved forebears, tapped in to get them through. We've had found it. Where the Spirit is, there is liberty, liberty for the outsider, the immigrant, the poor, and the persecuted. The Spirit of God that gave African slaves the strength to liberate themselves, that broke the yoke from around their neck, and that is still giving black people the strength to fight for their liberation today. That liberation is here for the taking. And must I say, as we embark on Juneteenth, the last storm we had, our two signs that are embarrassingly on each side of our county as we enter, I noticed that the one on the western end is terribly battered, like it had been through a war. And as I've said in previous, I said, Joshua fit the battle of Jericho. But, people will say that things will not ever come down. Well, don't put it past God, because he's in charge. He's in charge. And just like that battered flag that is at the west right now, it's battered through a storm. And that's battered. And he can bring things down as well.
Thank you, Ms. Kincaid. Madam Clerk, do we have any others signed up tonight? All right, thank you very much. And with that, I'll close this portion of our meeting, and we'll move to item number 9, consent agenda. And I'll recognize our county manager, Mr. Epley, to review the items on the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Several items for consideration. Bear with me as I work through them. Item 1 is our quarter ending March 31, 2024 financial data as presented by Burke County Public Schools at your pre-agenda meeting. Those details are in your packet for review. Item 2 is reappointment to our local emergency planning committee for seat number 16. That'll be filled by staff. That also is in your packet for review. Item 3 is a request to waive a residency restriction for the America 250 Committee for Charles Yount, who lives in Caldwell County. Item 4 is a request to remove Dorian Palmer, who has requested to resign from our planning board. That seat will remain open until we receive an applicant. Item 5 is an appointment to the Adult Care and Nursing Home Committee for seats 1 and 3. Item 6 is another request, excuse me, I messed, on item 3, that was Kevin Hancock. Item 6 for the Board of Adjustment is Charles Yount for seat 4, who has resigned. Item 7 is consideration of budget amendment number 13 on the year. This is for $302,000 of state grant for some SCIF projects, specifically going to the Sheriff's Office. There's part of that for water sewer meters, and then also a small allocation to the Register of Deeds for some digital imaging. Item 8 is budget amendment number 12 on the year. Request to budget $360,000. This is a combination of over-received interest income as well as some 911 state grant money, and that'll be used to replace a failing scale server. Item 9 is a request from Community Development to approve an MPO grant for Canal Bridge through the locally administered project program. Item 10 is a request from Social Services to approve a contract with Northwoods for a contract for their digital imaging software as we begin to transition on that platform. Item 11 is a lease renewal for some county-owned property leased to USDA. The total amount of that lease is $38,778.10. Item 12 is removal of seat number 15 on the JCPC board as Judge Tolbert is retiring. Item 13 is approval also JCPC for the upcoming budget year annual funding plan as part of what this board reviews annually. Item 14 is from the Tax Department, and this is your April 2024 collection report. Item 15 for consideration is also from the Tax Department, is your April 2024 release and refund report. And lastly, for consideration, item 16, which is the quarter end March 31, 2024 financial data for Western Piedmont Community College that was presented at pre-agenda and is also in your packet for review. Happy to answer any questions. That concludes the lengthy consent agenda.
All right, thank you, Mr. Manager. Any questions on any of these items? Seeing here none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, Commissioner Smith. All those in favor signify by the uplifted hand. 3-0. Thank you very much. This brings us to item number 10, and let me just say to the Hewitt family, we certainly love for you to stay, but we're about to embark on probably a lengthy next section, and it won't hurt our feelings at all if Mr. Hewitt would like to go. And just know that we're glad for you to stay. I'm not trying to rush you away, but we got a ways to go. So feel free, do as you please. All right, first item on the items for decision. This comes from Community Development Award Contract for Trail Design and Engineering. This will be presented tonight by Sarah Shabane, our trails specialist.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, members of the public, and fellow county colleagues. Tonight, the Community Development Department, in partnership with Friends of Fauna Flora State Trail, Over Mountain Victory North Carolina State Trail Friends Group, we issued a request for qualifications for trail design and engineering services on January 19th, 2024. We extended the qualifications for this through March 29th, 2024. A required site visit was hosted on February 6, 2024, where 10 individuals representing 8 different firms attended. The review committee was comprised of representatives from the Friends groups of both the Fauna Flora State Trail and Over Mountain Victory North Carolina State Trail, along with 5 county employees. The committee reviewed the 2 submissions which were received from Destination by Design and Alta. Both of these firms were interviewed on April 11th, 2024 and were highly qualified. The committee has recommended Destination by Design for the project based on their vast experience with trail design, regional knowledge, affiliated engineering firm Success in submitting plans to NCDOT. The request for qualifications for this project is to select a qualified professional firm to provide design, services, and construction documents for 3 sections of the co-located Fauna Flora and Over Mountain Victory State Trails. These sections include a repair of 1.75 miles in the 1780 neighborhood, new construction of 2.2 miles through the Enclave neighborhood, and new construction of 0.8 miles through the Lake James Family Camping Resort and Marina. Each of these sections will have some unique challenges that the engineering and design firm is ready to take on. The benefits from this RFQ include a set of construction documents that can be utilized to bid out the projects individually. This will allow for continued growth of the trail systems in Burke County, as well as create multiple safe road crossings for the trail. Burke County will be the primary point of contact with Destination by Design through managing development of construction documents and processing requests for reimbursements from partners. The Destination by Design contract cost for scope of services is $200,000 with an allowances budget of $108,000. The contract total not to be exceeded is $308,000 total. The project partners have greatly contributed to this through their time and financially. Each of the groups have obligated $65,000 to cover $130,000 of that contract amount through an executed MOU. If approved, the county's portion will not exceed $178,000, which will be utilized from the account's title grant match, which is a Duke comprehensive relicensing agreement funding specifically for use for Over Mountain Victory Trails. So we are requesting permission to enter into contract with Destination by Design and an MOU with our trail partners.
All right, thank you, Sarah. Gentlemen, we heard discussions on this during our pre-agenda, and Sarah has again reviewed it. Any questions for Sarah tonight? Seeing here none, I'll entertain a motion at this time.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to award the contract to Destination by Design for trail design and construction documents services on the Fauna Flora Trail, Over Mountain Victory Trail, state trails, and sections in the amount of $308,000. Further, I authorize the county manager to execute the contract and the memorandum of understanding on behalf of the board, subject to review and or revision by the county attorney.
All right, thank you, Mr. Burns. All those in favor, signify by the uplifted hand. That's 3-0. Thank you, Sarah. This brings us to item number 2 from General Services, approval of lease for semi-trucks and contract for refuse trailers and related budget amendment number 14. This will be presented tonight by Mark Delahunt, our General Services Director. Evening, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As I mentioned at the pre-agenda meeting, in recent years, our 2 enterprise funds, both water, sewer, and solid waste, have had to be supported with funds from the general fund. Now that our water sewer fund is solvent, we are implementing plans to do the same regarding the solid waste fund. As part of that plan, Burke County will be transporting our own household waste from our transfer station to the MSW landfill in Caldwell County. In effect, this will be bringing in-house a service that is now being provided by a for-profit company. This will bring about an eventual savings of over $1.2 million per year. To begin that process, 2 RFPs were advertised on May the 3rd, one for the purchase of 4 trailers and another for the leasing of 3 trucks, with responses due back on May 13th. We received a total of 12 responses, resulting in a very competitive bid process. The low bidder for the truck lease was Ryder Trucks, and for the trailers, it was Pinnacle Trailer Sales. Now I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you, Mark. Any questions for Mark on this item?
I don't have a question, but I'd just like to say I think it's a no-brainer if the county can take this over and save $1.2 million a year. I'm all for that. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Well, I lean a lot of the credit to our budget analyst, Hugh Sandow, and the county manager as well for assisting with that, and the finance department. They were very helpful. We all work together. Got a great team here.
I agree with that.
All right, I'll entertain, fellas. We got 3 separate motions. We need to vote on them separately, so I'll entertain the first motion.
Mr. Chairman, I vote or make a move that we award the bid in the amount of $295,600 to Pinnacle Trailer Sales and authorize the county manager to execute the contract on behalf of the board, subject to review and/or revision by the county attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. All those in favor signify by the uplifted hand. Thank you very much. Entertain the second motion at this time.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to award the lease in the amount of $90,900 to Ryder Truck Rentals for a 5-year term and authorize the county manager to execute the lease agreement on behalf of the board, subject to review and/or revision by the county attorney.
Thank you, Commissioner Burns. All those in favor signify by the uplifted hand. That is 3-0. And the third motion to adopt budget amendment number 14 as presented.
Mr. Chairman, I make the motion we adopt budget amendment number 14 as presented.
Thank you, Commissioner Smith. All those in favor signify by the uplifted hand. That's 3-0. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, if I might just for a second. I too want to express my gratitude to the county manager and staff. It's refreshing when we get news that not only did they think outside the box, they felt like there was no box. And I commend you guys for that.
I say something else, Mr. Chairman. If any of you use the convenience centers here in Burke County and you've ever gone there, I went there today myself. Didn't have to bring my trash back home, but I didn't miss it by much because the company that does it now, they don't come and do it on the day this recycling center is closed. They come on the day when people are going to the convenience centers and they pull those things out, and you can't just leave your trash laying there on the ground, so you get to haul it back home. So that's one thing I really like about this.
All right, thank you. All right, this brings us to item number 3, a health opioid RFQ vendor selection for strategic plan. This will be presented tonight by Dr. Katie Varnado. Katie, good evening.
Good evening. This item that I'm bringing to you is in response to the RFQ that we released to hire a consultant to do our long-term spending and strategic plan for our opioid settlement dollars. So we received 6 applicants in response to that RFQ, and we formed a review panel of 4 people, and community engagement group scored the highest in that bid tabulation. So we would like to recommend to contract with community education group to do our strategic plan for opioid settlement dollars.
All right, thank you, Katie. We did have more details on this pre-agenda. Any questions for Katie before entertain a motion? Seeing here none, I'll move to approve the utilization of community education group to complete the county's strategic plan for the expenditure of opioid settlement funding as presented, to authorize the local health director to negotiate and execute the contract, subject to review and/or revision by the county attorney. If an agreement cannot be reached with the community education group, the local health director, in consultation with the county manager, is authorized to negotiate and contract with the second and third ranked firms. All those in favor of that motion signify by the uplifted hand. That's 3-0. Thank you, Katie. Item number 4, also from the Health Department, revised resolution directing expenditure of opioid settlement funds for multiple uses. This also will be presented by Katie. Katie?
And this recommendation is to extend the timelines on 2 of the strategies in the last resolution to match the other 2 strategies. And this is to account for the timeline in releasing the RFQs and doing the bid tabulation.
All right, thank you, Katie. Gentlemen, you've seen this information. I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to adopt resolution number 2024-08.
All right, thank you. Those in favor signify by the uplifted hand. That's 3-0. All right, thank you, Katie. Item number 5 tonight comes from the county manager. This is presentation of recommended budget for fiscal year 24-25, and this will be presented tonight by our county manager. We'll give you about 10 seconds for this, Mr. Manager.
A mobile device so that I don't have to hug the podium. and 10 seconds may not cut it. But I will move as quickly as I can. A lot of information to cover. Super excited to be able to present our second budget together as an administrative team. As Mark pointed out, I would like to say thank you publicly to our budget team. It may not work. We may go back to the podium and hug it, but it's worth a shot. Give it one more chance. As well as our finance office and certainly to our Board of Commissioners for your leadership. Before I jump in, I would characterize this budget really by two fundamental principles. I think that in the midst of some what I would call financial disruptions of inflation and rising costs, financial disruptions of legislative changes that reduced revenue outside of the county's control, all of these things we'll talk about, and financial disruptions from unfunded mandates. We've experienced all of those as we prepared the 24-25 budget, but in an effort of what I like to call re-engineering or manufacturing budget savings, what Mark just talked about with insourcing our municipal solid waste transport, that's one example of several that we'll cover tonight that, again, I think helped mitigate some of these financial disruptions without passing any additional burden on to the taxpayer. And that's, I think, in essence, the real summary of this year's effort. And in the absence, I'll transition at this point, because that doesn't seem that it's going to cooperate.
In the absence of some of those additional re-engineering strategies, I think that it would have really impaired our ability to continue to implement the Board of Commissioners strategic plan. So I'll jump in. I'll first start by sharing a slide that we've talked about many times, and this is really a cultural tone of our 5-year administrative plan, broken into 3 fundamental phases. The first one being react, and then rebuild and rethink. And conceptually, in 22-23, there was a lot of lack of stabilization in Burke County's administrative plan. High turnover, stagnated capital projects, siloed operational departments that weren't really creating a high level of operational efficiencies. And REACT was all about stabilizing those factors. It was about investing into consistency and then really setting the foundation so that we could begin to rebuild and pursue high performance. And then what I would define as rethink is a lot of what we're going to talk about tonight, which is how do we do our business differently? How do we do it better? How do we measure performance? And really, again, advance the strategic initiatives of the Board of Commissioners. I think the budget gives us a very unique opportunity to do that. Although our roles as the Board of Commissioners, as our elected officials and policy setters, give us the vision and the things that we're trying to accomplish, the budget gives staff an opportunity to really quantify those priorities and put them into our operational plan that really sets the path for the next 12 months. That path being set primarily by the Board of Commissioners strategic plan. So these are your 5 focus areas. As you all know, we constantly revisit this plan, but the primary attention happens during your 2-day work session that we do at the beginning of the budget process. Each of these 5 focus areas have a series of very thought out, well-defined and measurable performance deliverables, and we use those literally to allocate resources. Inside of that plan, here are your top priorities. As we began the budget process, we knew these were the things that the Board of Commissioners had identified as the areas that you most wanted to see infused with resources and most wanted to see funded. I'll run through those quickly. As you all are well aware, over the last 9 months, we've conducted a comprehensive pay and classification study. We'll talk more about that later, but that's the first one in the history of Burke County government. And of course, we wanted to achieve market-based wages, and we wanted to be really in the pursuit of this employer of choice concept. But the biggest thing that I would argue that comes out of this study is job descriptions that haven't been updated in 30 years. You think about a job that was done in the 1980s, and technology changes and legislative changes, and literally those job descriptions haven't been updated in decades. We also were completely absent of a quantified way to compare jobs. So for example, a 911 telecommunicator compared to a truck driver. How do you relate those jobs from performance and pay? And this gives us a really mechanical and measurable way to do that. We also wanted to evaluate not only solvency in our solid waste fund, but also our water sewer fund. Again, we'll talk more about the performance of our enterprise funds later. looking for some innovative ways to do economic development through potential shell buildings, but some way to cultivate jobs and really impact tax base. We know that we have some improvement areas in our public safety functions, and we want to commission a long-term strategic improvement plan there. Continuing to look for ways to implement our capital improvement plan that we started last year. This would be year 2, and staying committed to that, as well as looking for ways to enhance our communication, our transparency, certainly the way that we communicate, not only how much we communicate, but the ways that we communicate to the public. When I break all of that down, we've really been, again, as we talk about this 5-year administrative goal, looking to continue to fund really into 3 buckets. I believe that our organization runs best when we invest into systems. Those systems are technology, infrastructure, and people, and I think that you'll see this budget continues to do that while building really a robust culture, an intentional culture, a purpose-driven culture, and I believe once you take care of those 2 functions, your impact on the community really is more meaningful and more telling. So I've laid the PowerPoint out really in 3 really distinct compartments. The first one is, it's important to remember where you've been. If you want to know where you're going, one of the most important things to do is recognize where you've been. I'll talk about where I think we are now, developing the budget. So much of our budget is dictated by economic performance. That's global, that's national, that's state, that's micro here in town. So we have to understand how the economy is performing before we can do more precise revenue projections, which will ultimately drive the spend plan. We'll talk about our general fund, our tax rate, capital improvement plan, education, which is primarily public schools, and the community college, our partners with outside support, and then our enterprise funds, which are solid waste and water sewer. And then lastly, I'll close with some things that I see that are coming around the corner that I would call emerging issues. So let's talk briefly about where we've been as we began preparing the 24-25 fiscal year budget. What are we working at? And the first thing that I'd say is we all fall on this spectrum of good, better, and best. And I think we're trying to pursue high performance. I believe this budget does move us incrementally to the right in an evolutionary way, so that we can be a little bit better. But again, in the context of where we've been, I'll first start at a more zoomed out view of our general fund. Here at Burke County's total spend in our general fund, as a reminder, is our primary operating fund. And we're measured here in the orange, and you can see a group of our peer counties. So this would be 8 or 9 counties around the state that have similar population, similar budget size, similar socioeconomics, and the local government commission would consider those good benchmarking peers for us to see how we perform and compare. And consistently, when you look really back over the last 5 or 6 years, you can see a substantial difference between the orange and the blue, and systematically that's just demonstrating that Burke County has spent less than our peers. To put that in context, I put together this slide which adjusts prior year spend. So these are looking back over the last 10 years from our audited expenditure numbers, so total amount spent from our general fund, and I've adjusted that for inflation, right? So I think most people recognize that via time value of money, $1 today is worth more than $1 tomorrow, right? So if for example, in 2014, a Toyota Corolla cost $16,000. In 2024, that same Toyota Corolla costs $22,000. It's the same car, your dollar doesn't go as far. So I've taken our previous 10 years of annualized expenditures and I've adjusted them for the time value of money based on inflation. And since 2014, there's been about a 27.3, and that's according to the United States Department of Labor, 27.3% increase in cost. As we finished 2023 last year, we spent almost $96.1 million. If I go back and adjust those previous 10 years, again, for the inflationary offset, I think it's true to say when evaluated at purchasing power and adjusted for time value of money, we spent less last year than we did 10 years ago. Which, again, put it in context of where we've been. How do we spend our money? Where have we been? We've also had a focused effort on increasing equity. In 2003, 2004, Burke County government was under strict oversight from the local government commission because our fund balance, our equity, if you will, was substandard to state requirements. And in essence of that, you're often at, risk of being taken over and being managed that way. But I'm very pleased. There's been an intentional effort to growing that. We concluded last year at 32.8%, which is trending ahead of our peers. So where have we been as it relates to public safety spending, which is our second largest function in our total budget? The upper left-hand corner, again, we're in the orange, or excuse me, the blue there. Our peer counties are in the orange. And this is looking at our total amount that we spend in the Sheriff's Department divided by our total number of people. And you can see there, we spend about $97 per person, where most of our peers are spending more than $140. Same with detention, same with 911, and the trend there is clear that we've just operated in a more efficient, lower cost way. And I think to some extent that's had an impact on our ability to perform. When I look at public education and where we've been, the narrative is fairly consistent. Our average, this is looking at the total amount spent divided by the total number of students. So that gives you an average per pupil funding analytic. And you can see our peer group there in the blue. We're in the orange. Out of 115 LEAs, local education authorities in North Carolina, 100 counties, 15 cities still have school districts. We ranked 99th last year out of 115. We funded at about $1,431 per pupil. Last year, as you all know, we were able to redraft some local legislation from back in 1983 that had been in place for more than 40 years. And by doing that, we were able to increase, this board was able to increase local public education funding by 25% or $3.2 million per year, which was transformational to that group. When I look at our enterprise funds by definition via the North Carolina Fiscal Control Act are supposed to be supported through user fees. So this is supposed to be more like a standard business, not supported through property tax revenue. We have two of those in Burke County. One is our solid waste fund. The other is water sewer. Both are critical. How we handle solid waste and the infrastructure in the ground that provides clean drinking water and proper handling of wastewater are hugely impactful to our community. And both have been non-self-sustaining. Both have required substantial support from the general fund, which puts additional unnecessary pressure on the property tax rate. So this is measuring the amount of that, what I would call subsidy. When I say subsidy, I mean what amount of general fund money is having to be transferred over to those enterprise funds to make them break even. And you can see over the last 3.5 years, it's about $1.7 million. I'm happy to report that this budget will begin to change that narrative. Again, we'll talk more about that later. A couple additional slides to give an optic and a picture, a narrative of where we've been and what we're managing and I believe turning the corner as we continue to pursue high performance, which is what this budget is really all about. Up and through 2023, Burke County had experienced substantial turnover. In our industry, 20% would be, again, considered, based on the context from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, 20% would be average turnover for local government. And you can see our trend line over on the right-hand side. In 2022, 2023, we were 28%. And what's more concerning is this trend line where we were trending up versus not. And that's highly concerning. What that leads to is a very untenured workforce where your average employee has less than 2 years. And you think about law enforcement, paramedics, environmental health specialists, public health nurses, social workers. So much of our work is instinctual and it is based on experience. And again, I think that impacts and impairs our ability to perform. When I look at our human services budget, what we can see is an increasing Medicaid eligibility percentage across Burke County. So this is our trend up. That's a component of community wealth. Medicaid eligibility is determined as a percentage of one's income compared to the federal poverty rate. And what that tells me is that our average income is not keeping up with those standards. And so more and more people are becoming eligible. And that is before, I would say, Medicaid expansion, which took place December the 1st. On average, our social services budget is about $18.1 million. Public health is about 3.4, and respectively, about 29% of social services comes from the county's general fund, and about 44% of public health budget comes from the general fund. So it's a substantial investment of county resources to fund these two departments. Lastly, I'll leave you with this. Where we've been from an infrastructure perspective, as you all know, the county commissioners conducted a facility master plan in 2020. Mosley Architects did that, and they ranked each of our buildings in 5 systems: mechanical, structural, plumbing, electrical, and gave them a condition. And what you can see here is many of our buildings were just substandard and reaching end of life. And that really spurred the need to begin to draft and execute on the long-term capital improvement plan. So that's where we've been. Those are the aspects of county government that we're trying to manage. And let's talk about where we are. And I would start by saying the state of Burke County is strong. The state of Burke County is strong. I think our performance indicators are picking up. I think our economy is, for the most part, performing. And I think that we have a unified vision of what it is that we're trying to accomplish. Our human capital indicators have certainly stabilized. We'll talk about that more momentarily. We've continued to have strong equity. Our debt ratios are literally nationally leading. So when you compare our debt burden as an organization, as a corporate entity, compared to other folks in the state and in the country, we are leading. We have the 28th lowest tax rate. Only 27 counties in North Carolina have a lower tax rate than Burke County. And we are executing on our long-term capital plan. The objectives that we penciled in as we began the budget was to be, obviously, the Fiscal Control Act requires us to be structurally balanced, but we really wanted to be priority-based. We wanted to maintain or improve service levels. We believe that we've accomplished that. We've wanted to find ways to improve operational efficiency, again, manufacturing savings that add to budget flexibility. I think we accomplished that. And we want to make sure that we're doing a good job of communicating priorities and communicating strategies so that everybody feels like they're a part of the solution. The formal budget process, although it's really a 12-month project, the formal budget process kicked off with the department head meeting in January. We were conducting mid-year financial analysis for Q1 and Q2. That would be July through December. And then that led us into your 2-day work session where you set priorities and gave direction on initiatives and strategies. In between March 7th and tonight, we have met with 28 operational departments. Every single department had an extensive, some more than one, budget meeting. We met with as many community partners as needed to meet with us, including one yesterday. So continue to work. We've met with our legislator. Of course, we did economic forecast. We've drafted and updated your strategic plan based on that work session and provided you a revenue memo. And then obviously, incrementally throughout the entire process, we've tried to stay connected to the county commissioners so that you all are not seeing this for the first time tonight. So again, as I mentioned, the economic performance drives a lot of our budget. A ton of our budget is on the revenue side is formulated through economic performance, and that revenue projection is ultimately what drives the expenditure, and that allows us to operate within our means. We talk a lot about what are the parameters in which we're permitted to work, and operating within those means is something that's critical to us, and being physically disciplined, using strategy to get there. One thing that we know is when I talk about financial disruptions, I mentioned one of those was inflation. Just like every business in America, just like every home in America, inflation is impacting what the county's able to do as well. The cost of our supplies, the cost of labor, the cost of day-to-day products that we use in our job has gone up. When I talked about unfunded mandates, an example of that is our treasurer, North Carolina Treasurer's Office, which manages the pension system that we're required to contribute to, increased contribution rates this year by 1.2%. That on a $38 million payroll cost us $400,000. So before we ever start the budget, we've got an increased cost of about $605,000. That's the equivalent to about 6/10 of a penny on our tax rate. When I look at more global economic indicators, really most things are pretty in line with what you would expect. Inflation is a little bit higher than what's considered normal. Construction costs there are really what jumps out. And when you're trying to administer a capital improvement plan and there's such a dire need, that's something that you really got to keep an eye on. We are experiencing a little bit of population growth, something that you might find unusual because of rising interest rates and rising construction costs. When you see construction costs up 30% as well as interest rates increasing, it's not surprising that our development fees are down 15%. So development is lagging, and we'll see that more in depth at a global perspective when we look at total tax base growth. There's basically been no tax base growth, no investment, no development in Burke County over the last 12 months. Here's a more of a national, this is from Moody's Analytics, and this is more of a national indicator when I start talking about, kind of global economics. And what's important is to see if this housing price index is beginning to flatten. Not coming down, but we are starting to see a softening, if you will, of home prices where they're stopping to climb. But to put it in perspective, in Burke County, March of 2023 compared to March of 2024, the average list price, and this is directly out of our MLS, increased 23%. The average list price in March of 2024 was $403,000. And I think that's a real challenge when likely financed at a 7% interest rate, and the per capita, the income required to finance that likely be over $125,000, which is much more than our median household income. So it's a real challenge for a Burke County citizen right now to buy a home. And that'll have an impact on our economy, and that'll have an impact on our budget. When I look at our GDP in Burke County, manufacturing continues to be the largest contributor. If that's the largest contributor not only to the labor force, but just generally to GDP, I think it's important to have a good pulse on how the manufacturing market is performing. This is a purchasing index that generally measures how are goods and raw materials flowing. If I'm a purchasing manager at a manufacturing facility, I have to buy raw goods and manufacture them into a finished product. And the takeaway here, anything above 50 generally demonstrates a strong manufacturing economy, an expansion economy. Anything below 50 is contraction and worrisome, and we're at 51 as of the time that I pulled this data. So what I would say is that's reason to be paying attention, and that's what we are, because again, it's such a big part of our labor force and such a big part of our GDP. The next thing that we looked at is motor vehicles. As we all know, motor vehicles are managed by the state of North Carolina through the tag and tax, but property owners do pay property tax on it. It's about 10%. We have a $10.8 billion property tax base, and about $915 million of that, so a little less than 10%, comes from motor vehicles. And as we've seen rates increase, what we've seen is the inverse, a decrease in sales and value. And when there's fewer sales of new cars, especially, and they depreciate quickly, that leads to a diminishing amount of value in our tax base, and that lower value leads to declined revenue. So again, it's something that has to be critically evaluated when we're working on the budget, as to not overestimate those values and pay attention to those trends. The other, one of the other financial disruptions that I talked about was legislative revenue loss. And a big one this year that wasn't communicated really across the state is balance between the North Carolina Department of Revenue and the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Service. It cost most counties across the state cumulatively $110 million in revenue loss, with no heads up, no planning. Burke County lost $1.6 million. So in 2022, 2023, we received $2.1 million. And this year, we're going to receive $450,000, and that's likely to be consistent in next year's budget. So we had a $1.6 million, 1.5 cent on the property tax rate revenue decrease just because of legislative action. And you may say, what is that? So back in 2010, 2011, the General Assembly repealed a sales tax that had historically came to counties, and they mitigated that by assuming a higher percentage of non-administrative costs for Medicaid. And so what I would say is this blue and orange line, the blue line is what the state is paying for Medicaid costs in Burke County. The orange line is what the county would have received in this repealed sales tax in 2010. And you can see, generally, when you fast forward, there's a gap, meaning that the state is paying less than the county would have received. That generated this whole harmless payment and revenue generation. But in 2024, there's almost no gap. And that's why the county's revenue has declined so substantially. In 2023, the state spent about $8.5 million, $8.6 million on Medicaid payments to providers on behalf of Burke County citizens, and that jumped to 10.4 huge. Part of that is we've seen Medicaid eligibility percentage tick up. But regardless, that increased cost on the state side has substantially impacted the revenue generation for the county's budget that was unrestricted and used to pay fuel, used to pay supplies, used to pay people. So given all of those circumstances, declining motor vehicle values, leveraging high cost housing, unsettled manufacturing index, revenue loss from state legislation, we believe that we've presented a recession-ready, responsible budget that's heavily focused on data-driven decisions. Our total budget is going to be about $108.5 million. That's about a 2.8% increase from the prior year. I would point out, if you looked at last year's original budget, that number is about $10 million higher than last year. The reason is because, as I mentioned earlier, the legislative change for sales tax, the Article 39 and Article 40 sales tax that had historically from this 1983 House bill been accounted for in a restricted capital fund for public education, is now inserted into our general fund. So it's really the same level of funding, it's just being accounted for in a different position so that we can use that to support the schools and the operations, not just in the capital where there's almost $38 million in reserves. Here I've looked at our revenue change year over year going back to 2011, 2012. The average over that time frame is 3.5%. So as a reminder, inflation was right at 4% over the last 12 months. Our average revenue gain year over year is about 3.5%. This year we're at roughly 2.8%. So a little bit of an erosion there, not quite keeping up with inflation and our averages. The other thing that I want to point out that's important to us in revenue management is diversification of revenue. We want to lower the pressure on the property tax rate. The way that you do that is to look for alternative ways to generate revenue. That's investment income, that's sales and service, that's permits and fees. That's really having an entrepreneurial mindset. And one way to manage your success there, measure your success, is what is out of your total revenue portfolio, what percentage of that is coming from property tax. We've been able to decrease that just a little bit, which is a good thing, from almost 57% to 55.5%, and primarily by increasing some of our sales and service, which we'll talk about shortly, through other re-engineering strategies like insourcing EMS billing. So when I look at our total budget, again, roughly $108.5 million, and it's broken down by type and compared to the previous 4 years. So incremental growth really across all functions. Our property tax base, I mentioned earlier, is about $10.8 billion. That's roughly a $112 million increase, which sounds like a large number. It's about 1.3%. It generates about $919,000 of additional revenue. And moving into next year, I would point out that the recommended rate is remaining flat at 56 cents, and a penny on the tax rate is going to be about $1.08 million. I mentioned that there were little to no development, little to no growth in Burke County. 1.3% is the property tax growth, and that's across all sources, which is real property, personal property, motor vehicles, and state board. So across the entire portfolio, we saw 1.3% growth, which is essentially a quarter of inflation. And you can see that here. Previous year was substantial with revaluation. When you look back over other previous years, you can see there's just not a lot of development that's happening to the tax base. As I mentioned, 56 cents is our recommended tax rate. I would point out the average across the other 99 counties in North Carolina is 64.5 cents. You can see the history of our tax rate here. Obviously, with reval last year, we were able to reduce that by about 20%, 13.5 cents. And one reason that we're able to maintain a lower tax rate is because of the performance of our tax department, who have consistently increased that tax collection percentage. And this year, we're budgeted and balanced at 98% collection. The other thing that I like to talk about when we look at tax rate is, to put it in perspective, we all know that tax levy is what a citizen is asked to pay. And I think that most people would agree that's the most important product in a variable formula. So the tax rate is one component. We're currently at 56 cents, and also assessed property value. And when you multiply these two things together, you get to the tax levy. So when you evaluate some average home prices, for example, a $125,000 home in Burke County at our 56 cent tax rate, annually is about $700. The annual cost of a penny is about $12.50. So adjusting the tax rate up or down impacts that person by about $1.04 per month. If you move up to a more expensive piece of property of about $750,000, again, moving that rate up or down one penny impacts them by roughly $6.25 per month, for perspective. I've also compared our tax rate to some of our surrounding counties. You can see here the average for the surrounding counties is 55 cents. Out we're at 56. One thing I would point out, we'll use someone like Catawba, who has a much, quantitatively a much lower tax rate than Burke County, 39.85 cents. I would point out they have a $30 billion tax base. And so when you look at what their average taxpayer is paying, it's $716 per year, which is substantially more than the $622 here. So even though the rate is substantially lower, the average piece of property is substantially higher, the value. And when you run it through the levy calculation, you can see how that leads to, on average, a higher tax bill, which I think is what most people would consider priority. I mentioned that we have about a $622 per person taxing burden. That's the 83rd lowest in North Carolina. That, as we finished last year, obviously this hasn't been updated for this year yet. The 56-cent tax rate, again, ranks 28th lowest in North Carolina. And I think that helps keep in perspective, again, the efficiency that we're trying to do, and as we continue to look for other revenue sources and diversify. Next year's budget has about a 2% increase budgeted for sales tax for a total of $18.3 million. This is showing the performance of Article 39. I think that's important. Article 39 is the part of sales tax that is collected and sent back to Burke County. It's point of sale. So if people spend money in Burke County, it comes back to Burke County. So it's also a good indicator of how the economy is performing. 40 and 42 are collected at a statewide level and then redistributed to 100 counties based on your percentage of the population. So we have roughly 90,000 citizens in a 10.3 or 4 million out of 10.3 or 4 in the whole state of North Carolina. So we get roughly that percentage. But again, what I'd say is you're starting to see a little bit of flattening. And even though it's going up, so this is Article 39 increasing each year, this line shows the year-over-year percentage change. So even though we're collecting a little bit more, from 8.5 to 9, the growth percentage is continuing to decline, which again, another indicator of consumer spending and settlement and those type things. Typically, when you're in an inflationary period like we've been in, things cost more. When things cost more, you pay more sales tax. So this is something, I think it's a peer through the window that spending is slowing. I'm going to transition now to our operational budgets. I'd point out that this is an optic of our functional breakdown. So out of next year's budget, about 30% of our budget's in public safety, and about 23% is in in education, public education and community college, and about 26% is in human services. So that, another way to say that is for every dollar we spend, about 30 cents is spent on public safety and so forth and so on for our other functions. And what we spend, again, as we talk about operating within our means, we really try to balance what is the value versus the cost to make sure that we're budgeting responsible and that we're delivering high service and measuring our outcomes. So it's important to us to measure across all departments what is that cost and comparing that year over year to ensure that there is adequate return to the taxpayer. So what you can see here, for example, in 911 in 2023, the annual cost was about $1.90 per month, about $23 per year. In 2024, that's $26.84. These are the departments that we administer that are required by statute. Here are the departments that that are authorized by statute but not required, and again, what the average cost would be, and you can see how those total up to about $622 per person for 2024. We've also looked at functional spending per capita. So again, this is broken down into these functions: human services, cultural and rec, education, public safety, general government, divided by the number of people that we serve, and compared those to some of our surrounding counties. For example, in public safety, Burke County on average spends $204 per person, and you compare that to the group average of about $379. Public education is another good example where we spend about $200 and the group average is about $337. So just a good way to measure how we're comparing in our resource allocation to some of our surrounding counties. The budget that is being recommended for fiscal year 24-25 has about 73% of our total budget going to people. About 24% of our budget is earmarked for operational costs. That would be contracted services and things like that. And about 3% of our budget is allocated for capital. And you can see how that compares again to 5 other counties that are in our region or near us as far as a benchmark. A little bit higher on the people, a little bit lower on the operating, and pretty similar when we compare capital. A few highlights. For the second consecutive year, this budget is developed from zeros base. It means it's not taking last year's and adding 2% to it. There's no incremental budgeting. We start with zero for every single line of the budget, and that's why it takes so long, and that's why I believe we produce such a disciplined product. We have cumulative reduction in our operating costs. So if you go back over the last 2 budget years, when I say operating cost, I'm talking about this column. We're actually spending $461,000 less in operations now than we were 2 years ago. And that's something we're very proud of, with improved performance and more performance. It's the old do more with less cliche. It's very true. This budget includes year 2 of our capital reserve fund, our risk management fund, and our debt service fund. The human capital investment is broken down into a phased approach, including the full implementation of paying class. We are maintaining our 5% 401k contribution. There's 3 FTEs. 2 of them are truck drivers to drive those trucks that Mark just talked to you about with solid waste. We got to have drivers if we have trucks. And 1 is an environmental health specialist, as we've done an analytic for staffing and looked at restaurant inspection and on-site septic. We see that we're total number of hours required versus total number of hours available, we're short. So we're recommending the allocation of 1 additional FTE. We're continuing our recurring funding for roadside cleanup. As we've talked about many times, the federal grant money for the CAB program with broadband expansion, we believe we can get certainly over 90%, which is your policy goal, but that funding is still in place. We've increased public education funding by $250,000, the community college by roughly another $160,000, and we've maintained all of your fiscal policy goals, such as your fund balance percentage, your debt ratios, and your CIP ladders. I'll walk quickly through your strategic plan focus areas, starting with employer of choice. These are the goals that you've analyzed and evaluated as part of your attempt to pursue being an employer of choice, recognizing that our people are our most important assets, and at some point, without question, the performance of and delivery of our services is going to be mostly impacted by the people doing it, right? And recruiting and retaining high talent is the quickest way to really, again, move towards what I would consider high performance. Here are some of the investments that we made last year, and I would tell you that they've been successful. We talked earlier about incredible turnover, almost 30%, 1 out of 3 people voluntarily leaving this organization over a 2-year period. I'm pleased to report, as of today, we're below 10%. That's industry leading. I'm not aware of any county in our region that's outperforming us there. And when you keep people, and this is a little bit of a busy chart, but I'll try to explain it. A year ago, out of our roughly 675 employees, 300 of them had worked here less than 1 year. That's a real challenge. That's a real challenge. Because we've slowed the turnover, now we've been able to move the people that were in this less than 1 year to the 1 to 2 or 3 to 4 years. So we're able to move people to the right by retaining them, and it really, it also gives our existing staff some relief, because the work still has to get done. It's just divided amongst fewer people when you have this constant churn, and it's really some inertia that's hard to manage. So I think that's one of the biggest, if not the biggest, performance indicator that we're really beginning to turn the ship here. Also, when you have level staffing, you have to pay less part-time and less overtime. So moving into next year's budget, we were able to reduce our allocation by about $700,000 in what we pay in part-time wages and what we pay in overtime. So for example, a 911 operator can't work independently until they've been in their seat for a year. So that means if someone has less than a year of experience, you're putting them there in training with a tenured person right beside of them, and you're paying 2 wages, duplicate wage expense for 1 outcome. And those are the types of things that we're able to avoid. Moving into next year, tick over $38 million in total wage expense. I would point out that is reflective of the full implementation of pay in class, which is part of that. But the other thing that I would point out, and I think is critically important, because we've lowered turnover, we have 32 more people on payroll today than we had with the 34 in the 23-24 budget. So it's not only a more market-based wage, it's also more people on the team. And that's what's leading to what looks like a substantial increase in wages. But again, I think what's important is that we'll be able to retain those folks, and we'll be able to deliver high service delivery to our citizens. I talked a lot about this pay and classification study, and I believe the most two important things are updating those job descriptions and then giving us a system to evaluate job grades. As the example I used earlier was a telecommunicator and a bulldozer driver or a truck driver. How do you compare those two? But it also had the goals of fair market-driven wages, looking at both internal and external equity factors. The full implementation is about $3 million. As a reminder, we put that in the budget last year as a reserve. So that was not net new spending. That was just reallocation out of that escrow reserve into our departments. So we have a three-phase approach into our human capital investment this year, starting with that pay and class study, and then continuation of organizational performance pay, and then lastly, if necessary, a mid-year inflationary adjustment. The pay and class system I mentioned will be implemented July the 1st. That total cost is about $3 million. The performance pay, as you can see there, there's nothing budgeted. There's no dollars there, and I'll talk about that more in a moment, but here's the concept. We have identified 5 measurement criteria across the organization that, if we achieve them, generate substantial savings. So let me give you an example. If we're able to reduce our workers' comp cost by $10, we grab 2 of those dollars and give it back to our employees, who are being more cognizant about safety measures, more cognizant about how they help each other, more cognizant about reporting things, and we really push training, and that's one example. Other risk management costs, wellness costs, we're self-insured, self-funded for employee wellness, and I'll talk about that more briefly. But the concept is, if we buy into performance metrics that generate savings for the county, a portion of that savings is then returned to the employees to incentivize that behavior moving forward. And then lastly, in January, the lower of 2% or a inflationary offset, whichever is lower. More on that performance management system. There are the 5 measurements. I've demonstrated talent retention, so that's saying if we keep our turnover rate lower than 12%, then we'll qualify. If we don't qualify, then this doesn't happen. We don't get the performance bonus. Customer service, health plan costs, budget utilization, and net neutral risk management, which is property and liability, workers' comp, those type things. And if we accomplish all of those at that level, again, the savings are much more material than what's returned. 2 measurement periods, one September 15th, one March 15th. And conceptually, that could qualify for 2.5%. We're starting this, we really try to talk in terms of ODI, meaning a decision-making framework, so that our department heads and our staff make decisions that are first best for the organization. Understanding what's best for the organization will ultimately be best for their department. And then lastly, what's best for their department will be good for them as an individual. And so over time, as we redevelop human resources and modernize personnel policies, we'll move to a performance evaluation system that looks at the department level and the individual level, so that we'll have, pay will be more based on performance than just being a part of the team, which I think most people would agree makes sense. I mentioned that we're self-insured, self-funded for our employee wellness fund. The 24-25 budget does not include a cost shift. Spousal dependent premiums are not being increased. We are maintaining our 100% employer-provided health fund, that's meaning employees will receive that at no charge. We are making an effort of reducing costs. We are making some formulary tier changes, as well as reducing, changing some drugs that have to go through a laddered approach before they get prescribed, and some other weight loss drugs similar to the state health plan that no longer will be covered for non-medical clinical reasons. But overall next year, roughly $8 million plan. We are also trending towards biometrics in the fall, which will measure employees' health across 4 regions: A1C, cholesterol, waist circumference, and blood pressure. And if they have risk factors that indicate disease management state, then we'll put them with a health coach. Because what we know is for every dollar of prevention, you save $4 in claims. And we're trying to reduce the cost of our employee wellness fund. Public safety, the big thing there for next year is the long-term public safety improvement plan and the radio replacement plan. The radio replacement plan really starting this year to be a continuation. As you all know, we had about 212 radios that were really putting our public safety members at risk. And I'm really proud of our team for being able to work together and draft a replacement plan that's going to be able to solve that pretty quickly. Some performance indicators and why we think the public safety long-term improvement plan needs to be drafted. When you look at our calls per shift in the Sheriff's Department, we're in the orange. Caldwell and Lincoln, for example, they're in blue. We average about 10.5 calls per deputy per shift. Now, reminder, they're working a 12-hour shift, and a call takes an hour or more, if they're lucky, plus drive time. So you can see it is a very heavy workload. Our deputies per shift, I think this is telling, we average about 5, and you can see how we compare to some of the other counties in our region. Specialty type investigation cases, CID and special victims, you can see how that's climbing. The number of specialty investigations is just continuing to escalate. The sheriff has lots of reasons why that is and ideas. But the reality is they're being managed by the same workload, the same talent, the same people as they were several years ago. As we look at EMS, we know that our response time, roughly 10.5 minutes, is significantly higher than our peers, and we know that response time and survival rate are similar, are related. And we want to make sure that we're evaluating base location. We want to make sure that we're evaluating community medicine, paramedicine. We want to make sure that we're doing everything that we strategically can, not only to recruit and retain the highest talent and practice pre-hospitalization care, but that we're giving them the resources they need to perform at a high level. 911's consistently the same thing. Our call volume outpaces our peers, and on the fire marshal side, we know that those commercial fire inspections are a critical part. All in all, we've got about a $30.1 million allocation to public safety. That's an increase of about 7%. The vast majority of that is in people. During the pay and classification study, the Sheriff's Department, I think, was singularly the furthest behind when compared to other benchmark peers. Our volunteer fire department, as you know, we have 21 of them. The average rate will be 10.6% in the recommended budget. Total allocation of about $6.7 million. That gives a minimal revenue increase of about $8,800 on average per department. And here you can see those departments with their property value and change in revenue as we move into next year. So I'll look at community advancement. Housing and broadband are the two big goals here. As you are all well aware, we just recently concluded a housing study. We've put a small appropriation in next year's budget of about $15,000 to give that study some legs. That means marketing, communication, that means travel to meet with developers to try to help offset a housing market where the average Burke County citizen likely can't afford to buy a home here. And we think a lot of that is supply. And a lot of that supply problem is because people, developers may not know much, may not be indicated of Burke County and the ability to be successful here. We also, hand in hand with that, we're concluding water sewer asset inventory analysis that we started this year. That's a grant-funded study that we got a $500,000 grant from the General Assembly last year. That's not only going to make our water sewer fund more solvent so that we can look for expansion opportunities, but we know that's a key component to the housing side too. So those public policy areas really overlap. And then, as I mentioned earlier, this policy goal of pursuing what's called BSL, broadband serviceable locations, rooftops in our community, trying to achieve more than 90%. That's an ambitious policy goal for a rural community with population density like we have in some of the parts of our community, but we feel highly optimistic that we're going to be able to do that. Some of our outside funding partners you can see here, pretty close to prior year actuals, no material changes. Pleased that we're able to continue to support the meaningful work that these folks do. I'll move through this quickly. I know it's hard to see, but this is from the housing study, and it just shows that roughly there's 5,000 units short over the next 5 years. Here's showing the continued escalation in housing costs. This green line is reflective. So in 2019, the average house price was $160,000, and now it's over $250,000, and that's the median sales price, not list price. And then on the rent side, and I find this fascinating, in 2018, a one-bedroom, one-bath rental property rented for about $615 a month, and now that's almost $1,100. So we've almost seen it across one bedroom, two bedrooms, two baths, three bedrooms, almost a doubling of the average monthly rent price. So it's really housing and cost burden population is really significant. Economic growth, certainly we want to continue support for BDI, look for ways to have some more product development, whether that's buildings or infrastructure, but make ourselves more attractive. We know that 83% of the RFIs that come through the State Department of Commerce are looking for a building. So that means 4 out of 5 companies looking to relocate or expand. If you don't have a building ready and assets ready to go for speed to market, that you're not even on their radar. And we also know that our tax base is substantially lower than other people around us. And we're looking for, again, innovative ways to grow the tax base so that we can lower the burden on the individual taxpayer. And that's what economic development is really all about. Here's some of our economic indicators. Again, Medicaid population, 31.4%. A tremendous amount of our folks have food insecurity and what we consider living in poverty. I've compared our per capita income and average weekly income to the state averages just to show that we're lagging there. That's why economic development as a public policy initiative, I think, continues to be a priority and something that's important. Not to mention we have roughly 22,000 people who leave Burke County every day to go find work. That's a real challenge. And another 13,883 folks who come into this community to work. And we polled a sample population of those inbound folks, those 13,000, and 70% said if they could find and afford housing here, they would choose to live here. Staggering number. Lastly, fiscal stewardship, our capital plan execution, debt management policy, looking for opportunities to leverage outside funding. I think we've done an exceptional job at that. Maintaining your fiscal policies such as fund balance. We'll evaluate personnel FTE requests and then look at these manufactured reengineering cost saving initiatives. This is how we measure our performance as it relates to fiscal stewardship. I mentioned our debt ratios really are national leading. So one of those is what's called a 10-year payout. So that's measuring how much of our debt will be paid off over the next 10 years. We're at 77.8%. This is Burke County, and again, how we compare nationally to other similar sized counties and how we compare inside the state of North Carolina. Moody's and S&P would say anything over 50 is about as good as you can do. So that's a really strong metric. We also look at our debt service. So what percentage of our total spend plan is attributable to debt? We're at about 6.9% actually, which is the strongest category. And then lastly, debt to assessed value, and assessed value being your ability to generate revenue. We're at 0.3%, and really the bond rating agencies would say anything lower than 2 is about as good as you can do. So we're exceptionally strong there. Transition to personnel requests. From our departments, there continues to be more work and more pressure to perform, and that was indicated in their personnel requests. We had requests for 33.5 new positions. That would have cost $1.7 million. What is included in your budget is the recommendation of 3. 2 of them are solid waste truck drivers that we just talked about. And again, as I mentioned, 1 environmental health specialist. Total cost for that's about $211,000. We're staying committed to our technology plan, focusing on automation, security, and citizen interface. We got about $290,000 programmed in next year for just general computer PC replacement. And the total budget for IT is about $3.4 million. I made a big deal about talking about these reengineering strategies. Again, manufacturing, cost avoidance, or new revenue. Here are our 4 primary strategies. They generate about $1.9 million in what I would call budget flexibility. The first one is EMS billing. Historically, Burke County has outsourced EMS billing, and the billing company, which is located down in Thomasville, North Carolina, kept about 6% of gross collections. That equated to about $350,000 per year. By eliminating that contract, we automatically saved $350,000. Now, we had to hire staff and buy our own software, but that cost about $250,000. So we saved roughly $100,000 on net on cost avoidance there. And we think that we conservatively can generate an additional revenue of $250,000 just by increasing our collection percentage. There's a lot of reasons for that, but generally when you do something yourself, you do it better, and that's what we're confident that we'll be able to do. As I mentioned, we also restructured some parts of our pharmacy formulary as part of our employee wellness self-insured, self-funded plan. We removed certain drugs, changed other tier stackings, put in laddered, and then the biggest thing is, and we'll talk about this momentarily, the percentage of our total spend that was going to pharmaceuticals, about 41%, when industry norms and other plans should be in that 28, 29. That's really what gave us the leverage and the ability to negotiate with Blue Cross Blue Shield, who in our first meeting agreed that they could cut it 25%. So we're very proud of that. And then we talked earlier about this avoidance of part-time and overtime labor cost. There's that. We saw that earlier. Again, how we're just able to budget less. This is looking at our total wellness fund cost. So the blue is our medical claims. That's when someone goes to the doctor and the provider sends us a bill. The orange is the pharmacy claims, and this green line is what percentage of the blue is the orange. What percentage of our total spend is coming from pharmaceuticals. And 41 on average is significantly higher than what we would typically see in the industry. So being able to negotiate that down through some changes in the plan ultimately saved us more than $1 million. Our capital improvement plan, again, I know that's challenging to see, but it's really broken out between non-major and major. So these are submitted, each of our departments as part of their budget meeting submit not only this year's request, but from a capital perspective, anything over $50,000, they forecast out for 5 years. And typically our non-major, so not a building, not something that would be significant, something more like an IT server that's maybe cost $120,000 or an HVAC replacement, we would consider that non-major, and we would try to forecast that out over a 5-year period so that we can budget a little bit each year and not have this explosion of cost. And so our department heads have helped us do that. We try to keep that flat. I know this is difficult to see, but out through 26, 27, you can see it's about $1 million a year. So for example, if another priority shows up now, they're likely talking about 27, 28 before they get into the plan. And again, that flat spending gives us predictability and consistency in our capital budget. Here we've done it for water, sewer, and solid waste, roll-off trucks, a new scale at solid waste, and then some water meter replacements, which are highly aged in the ground of some of our water customers. These are our major projects. Again, I apologize that it's kind of fuzzy. You've seen this many times, but of our roughly $53 million major capital project initiative, the vast majority is from one-time grants or federal grants. As you are aware, Animal Services and EMS and the courthouse improvements are underway. We just received notification on Indian Hills Pump Station that we were awarded a $2.4 million federal grant, so that's a big win for our team. But we're pleased to continue our commitment to capital improvement in an affordable way as part of next year's budget. Public education, I would remind you, last year at your policy work session, you really looked at some performance indicators for public education, and you identified 3 fundamental goals. 1, we're 99th out of 115 in local education funding, so we want to be more competitive. 2, our teacher supplements were lagging substantially, which was leading to high turnover in the classroom. And number 3, our student-teacher ratios were substantially higher, 16-to-1, when compared to other school districts in North Carolina. So again, you did do a roughly 25% increase in funding last year. This is in last year's budget, roughly $3.7 million a year reoccurring. Got them up to a flat funding level of $20 million. That $20 million, I know that's difficult to see, but of the $20 million, about 10.2 of that's going to their people, going to the Board of Education employees. Another 8.3 in operations, custodial contracts and legal fees and insurance and those type of things. And then about 1.4 is going to capitals, facilities, and extracurricular stuff. So that's just a breakdown of the 20 million. I am pleased to say of your goals, the teacher supplement number, I know that you can see there increased by 63%, went from an average of $2,229 to $3,600, and that is meaningful to those teachers. So you've made yourself more competitive, or Burke County Public Schools are certainly more competitive as as an employer. And then lastly, I think this is one of the most interesting data statistics. If you look at student-teacher ratio in 2021, we're here. This is Cleveland, Catawba, Rutherford, Lincoln, Gaston, Rockingham, Moore, Rowan, Salisbury, and Nash Rocky Mountain Schools. But the blue is your 2021, 2022 staffing ratios, and the orange is now. So we, out of all these folks, Burke County Schools are the only ones who have improved. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that, but certainly it's helpful that this board has prioritized that. Next year's budget includes about a $250,000 increase. That gets us to 94th out of the other LEAs in North Carolina, about $1,840 per pupil. Community colleges, as you're aware, there's about 58 of them in North Carolina. We compare very favorably. Clearly, population FTE is students for community college. We're much smaller, about 50% smaller than the state average. But if you look at the state average for county operational per FTE or state and federal, we're within 1% of what the state averages would be. So we're really solid. When you look at our funding across these peers, we're right in line as a percentage of FTE, as a percentage of the county's total general fund, and as a percentage of the amount of cents on our tax rate, roughly 3.6 cents on the county's tax rate goes to the community college. Moving into next year, it's about a $160,000 increase, total funding of about $3.47 million. That does meet their request, and it continues year 2 of their flat capital funding. As you can see, prior to last year, it was kind of volatile, which makes it very difficult to budget. This includes a year 2 of $450,000 into a escrowed capital fund to use at their discretion. So now transitioning to our enterprise funds, wrapping up here. Again, these enterprise funds by statute are designed to be self-sustaining and supported through user fees. We're trying to change the narrative through improvement in the business envelope. That means, what do we charge our customers? How does that compare? How are we spending our money? What is the measured ROI? Why are we losing money? And as you can see, this has been the operational loss each of the last 4 years. We are trending towards more of a break even in the current year that we're in. We're pleased about that. What's more exciting is that we have a expected surplus next year of $1.25 million, which is the first time in a long time that that's happened. Again, and the indirect impact of that is reduction of pressure on the general fund property tax rate. So for the solid waste department, we got budgeted revenues of 6.6, almost 6.65, and total expenditures about $1 million lower than that. We're continuing to do a long-time rate stabilization study. As you all know, that, when you close landfills, you have to monitor that for 30 years, and that cost of closing that is excessive. So we want to make sure that we have rates that mirror that. Not only are we insourcing this transport, which is a $1.2 million gross cost reduction, we have to hire people and buy trucks, all those things we talked about today, and that's about a $400,000 cost. So the net savings is about $800,000. But we're also going to insource our own cardboard recycling. Currently, we have a contract for the public to pull that cardboard, whether it's full or not, and to haul it to an agent where they also keep the revenue. We envision installing compactors so that we can compact the cardboard. That will not increase the number of hauls, so we won't need new trucks and new labor to do that, and we'll also get to sell the cardboard on the secondary market. So we think that'll have a positive impact. Lastly, we're going to simplify our billing records and make sure that we're, again, a little bit more of an entrepreneurial mindset as it relates to what comes into our facility. On the water sewer side, we are standardizing. We have on the sewer side, we have 4 municipal sewer customers, Rhodes, Conley Springs, Hildebrand, and we have one more. Historically, those contracts have gone back for more than 40 years without being updated. And for 2 of the 4, we were charging them a rate lower than, see how good I can memorize it, lower than what our cost to treat the wastewater was. So we've standardized that at $5 with each of those partners. We think that'll generate about another $101,000 in revenue. We also, as I've talked about earlier, are completing this AIA study, which we believe is the solution to fix water sewer in Burke County. I'll be quickly here, but in the retail environment, they call it spoilage, which is you buy product, because we're a purchase water, purchase sewer system, which means we buy water, and then we sell it to customers at an increased price. We don't treat our own sewer wastewater either. We collect that, and Hickory and Valdez treat that for us. And what we've noticed in both of our systems, this is the water system. The blue line is what we buy. The orange line is what we sell. The gap between the two is what I'm calling spoilage. And we believe that that is substantial, and it's leaks, it's lost water, and it's lost revenue. This AIA study, we believe, will be the conduit, if you will, to help alleviate that and make our fund solvent long term. Same on the sewer side. We're treating more than we're selling. So we're literally subsidizing other systems across Burke County, and we want to increase that or fix that over time. We think that's the key to expansion and to long-term performance. So just to summarize, other budget deliverables. I mentioned no increase on the health insurance side. We did make some modifications to the dental plan that we think employees will appreciate. We do feel like we met all high priority operational capital needs. We implemented a fleet management plan. We're transitioning to biometrics and incentive-based wellness, and we're increasing the purchase order policy to $5,000. Mr. Chairman, I'll answer questions. I know that was extensive. It's a lot of information. I appreciate your patience in more than 10 seconds. That was highly appreciated. And ask you to receive this document and schedule a public hearing for June the 18th.
All right, thank you, Mr. Manager. It was a lot more than 10 seconds, but good information. Gentlemen, any questions for Mr. Epley at this time? Seeing here none, I'll entertain a motion to acknowledge receipt of the manager's recommended budget for fiscal year 24-25.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Those in favor signify by uplifted hand. 3-0. I'll also entertain a motion to schedule a public hearing for Tuesday, June the 20th, 2023 at 6 p.m. or as soon thereafter as persons may be heard, and vote by a show of hands. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make the motion, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Those in favor signify by uplifted hand. 3-0. Thank you very much. Again, thank you, Mr. Manager, and all the staff for all the work that has gone into this budget. I know it's been a lot to consider since along about January. Pretty intense all through the months of January, February, March, April, and now May. And it may not be over just yet. So continue that good work. Thank you again for all that you're doing. This will bring us to item 11, reports and comments. And I'll open the floor for those comments this time. I appreciate Matt Johnson sitting in tonight for our finance officer. Matt, any comments tonight?
Nothing today.
Thank you. Mr. Attorney?
Nothing from me tonight.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, members of the audience. I just want to thank the board for allowing me to attend the North Carolina Governor's Volunteer Service Awards ceremony, where we saw some familiar faces be recognized for the good work that they're doing, and they are invited to be recognized at your June 18th meeting as well. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Manager?
No, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Smith?
He's running out of wind. He didn't have any more left to make a comment. And I don't have one either. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Burns?
I just want to tell the county manager and staff how much I appreciate this budget and this presentation. One of the things that did ring true to me as we were listening to that, and how you guys were so innovative and trying to get this budget for us this year and hold the tax rate where it's at. I'm extremely appreciative, but it didn't go above my head that we need to continue to look at ways to diversify our revenue. So I look forward to any thoughts that we have on that going forward as well, because I'd like to think that there are still things that we could do to kind of hold the ship right for next year too.
All right, thank you, Mr. Burns. I don't have any other comments tonight. I will make several courtesy reminders. I'll remind you that the county offices and landfill and convenience sites will all be closed for observance of Memorial Day on May the 27th. Our Board of Commissioners pre-agenda meeting will occur on June the 4th at 3 p.m. On June the 18th, our Board of Commissioners regular meeting at 6 p.m. And again, ask groups that might like to come and assist us with the pledge to please sign up to do that. Again, remind folks to spay and neuter pets and foster or adopt pets from our animal services group. Also, another reminder from our litter folks, I'm sure they would appreciate it, as well as all of us. If you would cover your loads, take care of your trash, don't throw it in the back of the truck and think it's going to stay there, because it won't. It's blow out in front of my house, and then I have to pick it up. So please take care of your trash. And Madam Clerk, I see a note here about an event at Comma on the 15th of July, but I don't see a reference to that. Can you help me?
That is the Charlotte Water public input meeting at the City of Morganton Municipal Auditorium, and I was able to confirm the time, which I believe is at 6 o'clock. Just wanted to make you aware of that. And also, I just want to make sure that that I heard you correctly, and the motion for the public hearing should be June 18th, 2024. Is that what you said?
That's not what I said. That's not what's here, but it should be June.
It should be. Apologies.
Any, do we need to reconnect that motion for clarity or not?
I would move to amend to change the date.
Okay. Just for clarity, let's have an amended motion back up under the budget item from our county manager, a motion to schedule a public hearing for Tuesday, June the 18th at 6 p.m. or as thereafter, as persons may be heard. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the amendment.
Thank you very much. Those in favor signify by the uplifted hand. That is 3. Wrong hand, Mr. Burns. 3-0.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Madam Clerk, for that catch. All right. This brings us to item 12, vacancy announcements. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the boards. We have the following opportunities for citizens to be engaged in county boards and committees: the Adult Care and Nursing Home Community Advisory Committees, the City of Morganton Board of Adjustment and Planning Board for the ETJ, Burke County Board of Health, the Hickory Regional Planning Commission, Drexel Planning Board ETJ Alternate, Burke County Board of Adjustment, and the Burke County Planning Board.
All right. Thank you, Madam Clerk. And I would encourage our citizens to consider participating in some of these boards and commissions. We need your help on all of those, and you can sign up for that on our website, or you can see our clerk for assistance with those. I would encourage your participation. All right, this brings us to item 13, closed session, and we do have need for a closed session tonight to go into closed session to prevent the disclosure of privileged or confidential information, and if needed, discuss threatened or pending litigation, to preserve the attorney-client privilege, to discuss economic development matters, to discuss contractual matters, land acquisition, and to discuss personnel matters as authorized by NCGS 143-318-11A1, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I'll make that motion. All those in favor signify by the uplifted hand. That'll be 3-0, Madam Clerk. All right. So with that, thank you so much for your presence here tonight, your participation in our meeting, and we will consider ourselves recessed for just a few minutes, or we'll take a break for about 5 or 10 minutes before we actually begin closed session. So thank you very much. We'll come back into open session at this time and entertain a motion.
We just need an announcement, don't we?
Sorry?
We just need an announcement. Isn't that right?
Yeah. Just want to announce that in closed session that we made a motion to approve 10 sets, 2019 6 sets 2024 sets for a total of 10 sets of closed session minutes, and they were approved and sealed until they no longer frustrate their purpose.
All right, having that matter settled and no other matters of business to come before us tonight, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
All right, have a motion to adjourn. All those in favor signify by the uplifted hand, 3-0. Madam Clerk.
Raise your flag.